Let's focus on something red. Well, it is Mars, very Marsy Mars today, although it's a Mercury day. And this is Saturn hours, so it's a great time to talk about devil symbolism. And this video is about King Charles III and his wonderful portrait. So I try to understand, what am I seeing? Why am I seeing this right now? And what the heck happened here? So King Charles III showed his basically portrait. This happens when Ra is on his midheaven in Aries, with Mars in Aries approaching his midheaven. Okay, just for the sake of kind of an astrological point of view, King Charles has ascended in the middle phase of Leo, ruled by a 22-degree sun in Scorpio. So we know the degree of 22 degree, to kill and be killed. And his natural Mars is natural Mars that rules this is actually in the last phase of Sagittarius, 20-degree Sagittarius, later ruled by 29-degree Jupiter in Sagittarius, that is opposing a 29-degree Uranus in Gemini. So just to give it a sense of perspective, because I know anybody that knows a little bit of occult symbolism, and with all the SRA awareness that I love seeing around here, and I myself became more aware of like how prevalent it is, then it's very easy to laugh, and it is indeed funny. You see the king in basically what Donald Trump would describe a bloodbath. And I'm like, it's looking like between pink and red. I don't understand. And then people flip it over and they see like they see devil symbolism, but they see basically also the horns of the ram. And he does have, first of all, a midheaven in the sign of the ram. His sun is in the ruler of his chart is below the horizon, which make Mars the better one for his chart. Okay, it's a nocturnal chart, which means that Mars is actually more benefic for him than Saturn. And for him, the symbolism of, even if it's the devil or the ram or whatever they have to worship there, the color red would be appropriate for a person with a midheaven in a Mars rule sign, and basically a sun on a lethal degree in Scorpio. So maybe there is an attempt to do certain sort of a red color Mars remediation, natal chart remediation, and some approach to that. Yes, using the color red, and also using the signification of blood, which is a Mars signification. Okay, so before we go, the devil, blood sacrifices, yes, this is all true, but I also want to look at it from the astrological point of view. And when it comes to Rahu, right now is on his midheaven, so there's something fated here. This basically means that the solar eclipse is very triggering of his chart. Okay, the solar eclipse on 19 degrees Aries was on his midheaven and triggering the cardinal axis. Okay, not only that, his Venus is with Ketu, where Ketu is now in transit. Yes, and she's next to Neptune, and so Venus, that is ruling his 10th house in Taurus, is basically in Libra at home. She's in a beautiful place, but right now Ketu is going over this, and so wherever he looks from Rahu, from Ketu, his chart is very triggered, and he is a king, so solar eclipses affect him dearly. Okay, And so what we are likely to see with such situations is that they would try to do whatever is possibly can to remediate that. So using Mars colors is appropriate for this chart. Also using Venus colors, perhaps the pink was an attempt to do that. It was not only red, but pink and red. Maybe it was an attempt to do that. And it is also because his ascendant, Leo, even if he wasn't the king, he's very ruled by solar events. So solar eclipse, of course, it triggers immediately the sun and the moon in our charts. And for him, the sun is on the degree of to kill and be killed in Scorpio. Okay, so all in all, we see a very distressing view that is carrying connotations that apply to his chart. Okay, so the ram, yes, he's midheaven on the sign of the ram. The colors, Mars colors, and before we scream satanic everywhere, I want to emphasize that also in satanic there was adjustment here to his own chart, but also Mars will be going over both Rahu and then 19 degrees of Aries, triggering the solar eclipse. This is very sensitive point for King Charles. We've already seen Kate Middleton was missing suddenly, and I made my predictions according to that, and also described my consideration for saying those predictions out loud from the place where I'm coming from. And here we have another 22nd degree, this time the sun, and so there is a risk of intentional death to the king triggered by the birth chart, and attempt to draw a picture. Now his Mercury is with Keto, and immediately when I saw this I said it shows, yes, of course Mercury is also a picture, and let's just say this is probably looking like a very desperate attempt to remediate something that if it could be remediated is not by these terms. And now I want to talk about let's say why people were laughing. Okay, so the significations of using blood sacrifice is something that the world is becoming more aware of. One of the gates that open this awareness is Sedna ingress to Gemini, trining with Pluto, going back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius. And so Pluto is the great exposer. People look at Pluto, oh, you want to have something hidden, put Pluto on it. What Pluto is going to do for you, I give again the example of Switzerland. Switzerland would be the place where you would have offshore business, and then you hide the money in Switzerland. What Switzerland would tell both the Jews and the Nazis and everybody you didn't hear about, when they come to cash in on the money they hid in Switzerland, what money? Okay? And Switzerland just does this to everybody. The other thing that Switzerland did, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, and this is to expose everybody that has a secret account in Switzerland. And we had the head CEO of Bank Leumi, I think it was in Israel, one of the biggest banks in Israel, off with their heads together with all the people that were holding these places and holding high positions in countries, in the financial system and so on. So this is just the merit of Pluto. Pluto It says, don't think your secret is safe with me. Your secret is safe with me for a while and it will be exposed. Pluto does give a place of authenticity and it rewards authenticity. One of the greatest channelers that in this regard that I recommend you to watch is The Planet Channeling by M. I heard about her through Lada Duncheva. She's not very active, but M channeling EM, just EM, and she's excellent at what she does. And so Pluto rewards authenticity. It rewards going into the deep, acknowledging what is with you that you are uncomfortable with, and radical acceptance that comes with it, okay, is gratifying. So Pluto, what it does do is that it will keep your secret hidden so that you have the time to process it, and then when it comes a Pluto transit, some secrets are exposed. When I was around 2006, 2007, Pluto was going through my midheaven, and I felt like there was something that was a pattern that was going on in my life where I would do many things for no good reason on a secrecy, and it would undermine me. I would not do like things that are to be ashamed of, but I would just be doing things under the radar that would undermine the very thing that I'm trying to achieve. So let's say if I was interested in a person, instead of just communicating with the person, because I was not wanting to reject him, I was not sure if I want him, I would try to look and find out if I wanted this person. And then I would already come to know too much about this person to have an easy, calm, and cool interaction. I realized this is very stupid, and also it does not avoid the rejection of me towards them, or them, or at least for me to know if I want this person, okay? So this type of pattern for my life, I said I don't want it anymore. Next time I meet a person, I just talk to them and allow this uncertainty, yes, to be. Then it would be my Neptune pattern, as I haven't dealt with yet. And so the conjunction with my midheaven was very, very intense. I also traveled, this midheaven in Sagittarius, also traveled to Europe, and I felt a deep calling. But that was where I changed a pattern in me that was doing everything like to keep a secret, for no reason. Okay, the secrecy had no reasoning. Okay. And it was very stupid in general. I wasn't, yes, it was not like something illegal or something. It was just very stupid of me not having anxiety to talk with people openly. So another thing that happened had to do more with my Uranus square that was very, very horrible. And so today I believe it was two people that were in some ways quasi-SRA'd meeting each other, and you can imagine the nuclear explosion that was, two people undermining each other. So Pluto does give you this crisis point where you have to expose things. Yes? Another thing, when Aries and Uranus were squaring Pluto, I was Me Too veteran before I knew I was Me Too veteran. And I was exposing the cult, and I didn't understand what I was doing. And so, while doing that, and I understood that to heal, I must speak. Okay? Other more pleasant Pluto transits, let's say Pluto to my ascendant, so my own view of myself was transformed, but in a way that is more pleasant. Oh, suddenly there are more people that look into other perspectives on, mental health conditions and so on. Or Pluto as the recycling part, or if I throw certain things away or donate certain things, then I have rejuvenation and wealth. So this type of Pluto teachings I received in a more harmonious way. Okay? Pluto is going Aquarius. And so with Pluto Aquarius, anything anything hiddenly pyramidical is exposed by the end of Pluto Capricorn. So now when we have this very weird, it's literally one of the worst advices, but this is basically trying to use the remediation that goes and signifies blood sacrifice for preservation of the self is one of the worst ways that you could go about this. Okay, so Pluto is exposing things. Sedna in Gemini is another sign that rules children. Sedna in general rules a child that did not want to marry. And in some cases, and thank you, Molly McCord, it was also one of the versions of Sedna's story was that she was married to her father. Okay, so that was news, and I see it right as Sedna is approaching to my Chiron. Not personal significance. I was not married to my father, yes, but is very interesting because this affects many things, and the internal blood cults of eugenics. But I want to say that it is as old as Inuit, and we're all originally Inuit. Those themes that Sedna brings, and they are to do with basically betraying children and requiring a new type of honor and respect that was never before seen as a standard. We now know that to have sex with children is not good because it brings them to a situation of suicide. And for those people that are pissed at me or saying I'm a pedophile for saying that, no, it's something you need to understand that many people did not foresee. And the doctrine was to do that in Inuit times and in many tribes, and the doctrine was to do that. And it's important that the high suicide rates are associated still with incest even today in Inuit society, and they have the highest rates of suicide in the world because of this. And it's also problematic when it comes to colonialism, because this is where the Sedna reverence is not happening, and Sedna, what is depriving them of food. And so you see people until today, Inuit indigenous people cannot hunt for the sea life that they need, or cannot hunt in the land, and they have to go to the grocery store and they don't have enough money for food, okay, which only deepens the domestic violence cases. Okay, so we see that the Sedna story is very much alive. I live amongst a place where there are many Bedouin tribes, where it's also like indigenous tribes, and it's also happening. The men sometimes don't know. They tell to me, we are not there anymore. But if I ask the women that are outside of the norm, the women that don't go with the norm, they tell me, yes, this is true. I'm very lucky my family is not in this way. Okay? And so, of course, I have to be anonymous and sometimes not even connect. I can see this woman, talk to her, but I cannot keep connection, so I will not endanger her life. Not because of her family, but because of the tribe. Okay? So many children buried in the sands of what was the desert now is becoming more lively, but this still exists. And so the issue of child sacrifice in like royal families is used as a connection to what we know today as Rosicrucians. One of the symbols that I saw today was somebody that was Rosicrucian. I saw it had a red cross and a necklace, it's like a prayer necklace that was made of symbols of a fetus in the womb. And you wouldn't think much of it. It even looks beautiful when you think about the symbolism of birthing and so on. But we do know, unfortunately, that the practice of child sacrifice as blood sacrifices, offering the blood of the children, is kind of like the most sublime gifts to those gods, in order to preserve the rain. And this, unfortunately, is very likely still practiced in royal societies today. This is and it's important for me to say those are practices that actually create stagnation and bring to the fall of kingdoms. So this is why, we need to separate between using the symbolism of blood, like hibiscus flower, ethically resourced menstrual blood in ceremonies of indigenous people and not indigenous people, dedicating orgasms to the desired outcome, okay, for psychic protection, or things in favor of humanity. We need to understand that just like people are doing that in this fashion, people are also doing that in fashions that are not ethical, okay? So actual self-harm, actual harming people, actual sacrifice, and to create suffering, and the suffering they bring as a gift to the god. Then the act of self-mutilation and bringing it as a gift to the god is ancient and is tribal, and is inconsistent with a more advanced notion of religion. For example, the entire Abraham and Yitzchak story was when Abraham was planning to sacrifice Yitzchak, because some deity told him, and that deity said, no, stop, I don't need that. And even when you sacrifice an animal, eat from this sacrifice. Don't just kill animal. Maybe one sacrifice I give you that you don't eat from, because, and there was discussion between them about the mutilation of the body, and the God says, please don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And Abraham says, please, I need something. And eventually they settle for a piece of like the edge of the penis, okay? Which is basically a paganic, according to Abrahamic religion. It's not in alignment with the type of spirituality where you acknowledge that which is beyond the flesh, and you acknowledge it not by emblems in the flesh, and you acknowledge that eventually you go more and more, and you acknowledge that God is love, and so it is not pain and suffering that you give to the God, but rather growing with love. This brings another notion to Saturn, which is Satan for many people, and there is no Satan without Christianity. Okay, so this, whatever we call Lucifer, not existing without Christianity. The pre-notions of like the light bringer and the Venus. Venus is about pleasure. Yes, she's also the goddess of war. And again, okay, if you take a look at Libra, it's about the fixed star Spica, tropical Libra, is about justice and balance and balancing things. And we take a look at Taurus, the fixed star Algol. It's about not losing your head and about giving respect to sensual boundaries, being able to be safe in your sensuality and wealthy. Okay, so you are honored and respected, and your psychic intuition is honored and respected. Okay, the tragic story of Medusa was that it was not so. She was raped, she wasn't believed, because she was a sensual woman, and she was making the goddess Pallas Athena jealous of her safety and her sensuality, and she was not believed because of that, and she was decapitated. Her head was turning people into stone, and her head was turned into snakes, and so this is where those people of those, and even when I say Rosicrucians, I don't mean the people in the lodges that are doing, let's say, I don't know, having orgasms together or having a ceremony where they make a woman come and then they send it to the gods. I don't mean that, okay? I mean the top rank where you don't even know who runs this place, yes? And those people do these things, and then when people are persecuted, yes, very much like the elders of Zion versus the Jews, where the Jews were persecuted for something that other people were doing, And the secret societies were persecuted during Pluto in Aquarius. This is why I say get out of the lodges before November 19, where Pluto is in Aquarius again, because the people who are persecuted, okay, very much like the Jews, okay, most of people, Jews, they're secular, the place of God in their life is not very big, and even if it's not necessarily according to Judaism, and for them it's just like a place to live, a place to stay. If they're Israel, it's a place to live, a place to stay. And even I hear from IDF soldiers and women soldiers, this is like a cult. Okay, so they understand that there's something going on, and this is global. And so yes, this is a problem. This is a problem. And at the same time, the people who are indoctrinated in this, they're all doing that, are not at all Jews, and not even Zionists in the way that people think Zionism is, which to them is like a patriot, okay, or Israeli. They don't really know the difference. They don't really get to study even what these things are. And even when they do, it's more important to talk about eugenics, which is not at all Zionist per se, but way before it is tribal. The attempt to purify the race, it is tribal. Infanticide, it is a tribal, okay? And even the Sedna story, Sedna was killed because she wouldn't marry, whether it's her father or a man that was abusive to her. She was killed instead of her safety being granted as a free woman that is whether not married, or maybe they would need to change the culture so that the man she could be free with her and she could be free with him. Yes, we don't know if she just didn't want to marry or she just didn't want to marry into abuse. Okay, and so later the story Sedna became a sea goddess, and they had to revere Sedna in order to get food. One way to appease Sedna is not to swipe under the rug when those infanticides and honor killings are happening in the tribe. And it's true for the royal family in as much as it is true for an indigenous tribe in America, or Africa, or Palestine, yes, or Israel. And so this gate of Sedna Pluto is exposing the various cases of blood sacrifice that are unethical, and not only that they are unethical, they do not help. They don't help. What is actually useful is more on the line of charity and on the line of abolishing these practices, okay? A great way to revere Sedna is to abolish the praxis of incest, child sacrifice, allowing there to be accommodation for free women, and thus the free men as well. And so from within the society, and so is becoming less and less legitimate to oppress the society. The more people practice that within the society, that they give place and respect in ways that they haven't given before. Abolishing child sacrifice, taking care for the welfare of children instead of this child sacrifice, so by charity, is way better for the preservation of something. And I want to give a good example about the Royal English family. I gave it yesterday and I want to give it today again. The Royal English family during the last Pluto in Aquarius, around this time, was also the time where Voltaire escaped France to England, because in England he had a freedom of speech as a secular that he did not have in France. Okay, so the separation of the religion and the state was more likable in England, and so Voltaire praises England for this freedom of expression that he was given. And we know, of course, he was of secret societies. Any person, any name that you can name was with those people. But what is freedom of speech for the kingdom? Many of the royal family have placements around Algol, that is around 26 Taurus, especially 26 Taurus, and this is where reverence for Medusa Gorgon, Algol, is very important to have for the royal family. And the more that they do that, the more that this kingdom prospers. And when it's not done, we see loss of a reputation, decentralization. We see, risk to the livelihood of the royal family, and so on and so forth. And I invite you to watch M's channeling of Queen Elizabeth. This is Queen Elizabeth, and the very frank notion about the awareness of power, but also the lack of awareness of her own power and sovereignty to end certain things that she didn't know she has the power to do something about. Okay, there's a lot of seclusion of these figures from actual day-to-day life. This is also why their occult is so archaic. Okay, they have very archaic occult. They practice things that in Africa today are not practiced anymore. When you talk about putting hibiscus instead of offering actual blood, this I learned from people in Africa who are doing these rituals and honoring their gods. And so when people were asking, what can I use instead of blood sacrifice? Then their answer is a flower like hibiscus. Of course, let's say if you're no longer menstruating, and so on. So this is something that I learned from the place that people say from there. They have barbaric things and this or that. Yes, there are still tribes that practice child sacrifice today, unfortunately. They do exist. I know there are all these videos of African people telling you, yeah, Africa is like this, Africa is like that. We're here chilling. This is true, and this is true. Okay, there are many Africas. It's not one Africa. It's a huge place. It's a huge continent with many, 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 many tribes, many countries, many cultures, and many practices. So that is something to remember. But also bloodline segregation was practiced and still practiced today in Africa. This breeds apartheid. There's no other way about it. If I look at even tribal society here in Israel versus secular society, non-tribal society, yes, I do see that tribal society eventually it breeds, they have bloodline segregation and it breeds bloodline segregation. Yes, but also the upper echelons, the kingdom that practice this. There is a Facebook group in Israel that was called When Your Mama and Your Papa Are Cousins. Okay? And then when people would say something stupid, because it causes genetic degeneration, actually, would say something stupid, and then they would put it in that group, when your mama and papa are cousins. And now you think about, our Arabs or our tribal people, I want you to think about Bill Gates, because he is from the eugenics practicing lineage, and his policies are eugenics inducing and so on. Or the people that defend eugenics or the attempt to purify the race. Again, even if, let's say, I don't know, you could pick the color of the eyes of your child and you model it like a doll or something like this, you would still need to learn how to love it as a human. And yes, while it's wonderful that you can eradicate, let's say, life-risking diseases, this is one thing, but when we are talking eugenics, we're not talking about biodiversity, which is what actually eradicates those rare diseases, because the minute you mix the bloodlines, then 50% less to have a disease is already happening. Yes, if it is not in the other bloodline. And so... for example, I know this because my bloodline is mixed, and I have less percentage of risk to have certain bone-related hereditary issues because my bloodline is mixed. It's very healthy. And some of these are coming from North Africa, by the way. Okay, and so when I talk about this Sedna Pluto, again, Sedna Pluto, everything is exposed in regards to where Sedna is. And 0 degree Gemini is a very strong degree of the pure essence of Gemini. Okay, so the connection between big wealth, big secrets, hidden occult, all things Pluto, nuclear energy, and betrayal of children. Betrayal when it comes to speech. Elon Musk, as really I try to he's usually very attentive to people, more so than we understand, but he's also within the cult, unfortunately. And when it comes to what he practices, the freedom of speech not reach, maybe it feels like a good revenge for when he could not speak and when algorithm was canceling him or the people he likes and so on. But it's something he would really need to abolish as good Sedna remedy, especially as Ascendant Gemini. I think he's Ascendant Gemini, yes, Soul Cancer, but Ascendant Gemini. So that would be my greatest remedy for Elon Musk. And he did make some impressive changes. But this is also where Sedna brings in. Yeah, and he is really targeted for this shadow ban thing, and for no good reason that he should be doing that, because that would make he himself understand that the more freedom of speech is what make his platform prosper. We know Stella Assange running the campaign mainly through Twitter or X. We know that even the people who criticize Musk can speak on this platform. They are shadow banned, but it's not like completely blocked. Yes. And this is something in his favor. It just needs to go a deeper step, and that would be a good remedy. Okay, so for the kingdom, for the royal kingdom, to honor Algol and to honor Sedna would be to abolish these practices of child sacrifice and to make, sometimes the royal families are running with archaic versions of a cult, and to the people it looks funny. It's just like celebrities are doing things. So celebrities would talk about, let's say, narcissistic abuse when we are already, oh yes, that was a couple of years ago, okay? So, and then celebrities would go, think about the yes end of Ariana Grande coming like very much a decade after people were grappling with gaslighting and with bullying and so on. So this is how archaic the spirituality can be, and to actually change that, it can be very remedial because it's creating rejuvenation. Pluto will create rejuvenation in the relation between the people and the royal families. This is what it's doing in Aquarius, and the remedy should be around decentralization and charity, more so, and not about trying to have this big ritual of blood sacrifice so that they can preserve the power. It's an archaic notion of Pluto in itself, because Pluto in itself, it comes to rejuvenate, it comes to create authenticity. And so the inverted Luciferian version of like the light bringer, of like, oh, you do this, I don't know, you rape people and so on and so forth, and this, and then you have a death that you are reborn anew from this. No, this is not, no. Okay? This is what they call redemption through sin. No. First of all, it is an attempt to control something that is in essence not, how should I say it? Is to bring about a trauma in attempt to control how you are in a trauma. Yes, but it only brings trauma. It's re-victimization. This is the original re-victimization, the actual re-victimization. Most people were born into this. And so those type of, this is also not ego death. It's actually with the Pluto trine sextile Neptune here is actually the shadow facet is that people can do there's a lot of spiritual bypassing as well going on, even with the trine. Okay, so but it's more accessible to not do this, and so to understand that creating trauma is not a path to enlightenment. And the only time where eventually it falls was when people like Bernard Ronald killed themselves, and then they had a near-death experience, and then coming back and getting out of this world. Basically, the people who genuinely were enlightened, they got the fuck out of the cult. Either they crossed over, or they managed, like the rare cases of Ronald Bernard, to both survive and speak up against this, because this is actually not useful, and many things in the world do need to change. We definitely need enlightenment, and we definitely don't want it to be through crisis. So Pluto has a natural way of bringing these reveals, but when people do ritual blood sacrifice to sort of speed up enlightenment, and messing with the fabric of reality in such a way, in hope to gain the power, to preserve the power, is actually, I think, not the road to go. Okay, to expose to abolish the act of these ritual sacrifices, that can bring and set humanity on another trajectory, where you don't have this empire's rise and fall every Pluto cycle, which is 240, 250 years. And this is historians. Yes, they don't know Pluto. They're like, yes, every 240, 250 years, an empire rises, an empire falls. This is a Pluto cycle, and the next step is, of course, the United States that is going through a Pluto return. Still in orb, the Pluto return. Okay? And another thing that I want to talk about in Charles' chart, King Charles' chart, the third, this is the Uranus on the 29th degree of Gemini. This man does not have predictive abilities. 29 degrees, a degree of prediction, of divination. People with this degree, they have, with him, he has clear knowing. So he himself very likely already knows his life. I don't know if he's an eclipse child or not, I didn't check. But he himself already knows things, he can predict things, and this is opposing a 29th degree Jupiter. So there is a home sign in Sagittarius, so he has high predictive abilities, but I also want to tie it up with the fact that Uranus will be heading Gemini as of 2025. He delves into Gemini, meeting again this Sedna Pluto. Of course, anything to do with children, betrayal in children, trade in children will be exposed. Also in decentralized regimes. So if you think about the communist China, if you think about DPRK, it's very centralized. But the thing is that is a type of regime that is more Aquarian. Okay, it's a different type of regime. There's actually more Aquarian. And again, charity is the less archaic notion of spirituality to go there, because nobody managed to save their own arse with killing people as sacrifice, killing innocent people as sacrifice. That Stalin ended up with not having a doctor. Hitler ended up with having Dr. Mengele, so he killed himself. And that was not a lovely end for these figures. And of course, royal families are the visible ones. Okay, there are the people who are more invisible, but it's not in favor of the Tao that you can name to participate in these sacrifices of those invisible figures. It's a good thing to say with Sedna Pluto: betray the cult, not with the people. Those kingdoms that manage to do that prosper and survive, even, because this is, what happened to the kingdom in France. It was decapitated, very simply so. But Uranus Gemini was also when we had the American Revolution, the separation from the British colony, from being a British colony. And in this time, Israel will be having its Uranus return. So Israel is going through Uranus on the Israeli sun. It's beginning it right now, which is adjacent to Algol. So broadcasting from Israel here is going to be even more crazy. And this will be the first time that this country goes through Uranus return. Okay, it is 76 years old right now. As of 25 is the ingress, which already begins the trajectory of events. Israel's Uranus is more towards, I think, the end phase of Uranus in Gemini. And so US goes through it first and then Israel, but it's going to be parallel. So you understand the play that the United States maybe had tried to do with the state of Israel itself in order to preserve its empire. And I think we can also already see the backfiring of that as well. But yes, Israel will also have to give reverence to Algol. We already seen in October 7 what happens when Israel does not listen to its female watchers, does not give reverence to the women that were raped in Israeli prisons by Palestinian prisoners. There was exposure of this before, a couple of months before the 7th of October. The castrating of Ethiopian people. Many things that Israel will not be able to swipe under the rug and get away with it when Uranus is in Gemini. It has all the things to succeed, but it does have to give reverence to anything women and anything children, because its Mercury is on Aldebaran, and Aldebaran is tropically in Gemini. So you cannot mess with children without having, kind of like a retribution to that. And when Uranus is going to go over this Mercury in 10 degrees Gemini, it's definitely going to be, nothing can be swiped under the rug with Uranus. Nothing. It calls you for, it's just like, be authentic or die. For example, Adolf Hitler died during Uranus on his sun. Okay? My content when Uranus was on my sun began to change very drastically when Uranus was on my 15 degrees Taurus sun. And I think you've seen that, okay? I began to expose things, I began to speak about versus my life or other things, and I began to not do one-on-one readings. My content, my third house has changed dramatically, and also I started my gardening project. So many wonderful things. This was not easy at all. It's a very disturbing energy. You have to be authentically yourself, full presence, or else you perish. And anybody that had Uranus Sun would tell you how close they've been to perish for how long. And that is also, Uranus is the sign that symbolizes, the planet symbolizes astrology, but also suicide. Okay? So that's important to mention. All in all, what I think about this portrait, it's not looking fine to me. I talked about the May 20, Mayday, and Assange trial on the Royal Court of Justice in London when Assange is held in Belmarsh. And the question is, will he be extradited to the United States? I talked about the question of sovereignty here for the royal family, because this is a Royal Court of Justice connected immediately with the royalty. And I mentioned that Algol will be eclipsing right on 8:30 in the morning London time, which is the time of the beginning of the trial. Okay, if it's 2 hours back from Israel, so it's going to be around this time, around this very trial. During this time, Algol will eclipse. This is the unlucky day. Okay, if Algol eclipses every 3 days, around every 3 days, the eclipse day is the unlucky day. Okay? It's Egyptian wisdom, but we see it. While for the royal family to honor Algol and to not extradicate Assange for telling the truth, okay, the sentence of extradition is not because he assaulted women in Sweden. That's another issue. Whether they drop the charge, not drop the charge. This is something that Assange will either he already dealt with that, okay, in karmic level, or he will need to deal with that with those women. But when we are talking about being slow-mo killed for exposing actually torture and rape and these cases and war crimes and surveillance and many things that give us power when we come to make assessments that we can take to all kinds of places where to know that at least 10 people, I think, from Boeing whistleblowers died for something that if Assange was free and the platform was running smoothly, those whistleblowers could leak to WikiLeaks whatever they had to say anonymously and remain alive, and we will get the information about Boeing. So this is just one example. It's been active since around 2010, WikiLeaks. Another example is the Ukraine and Russia war. Another example is the 7th of October, okay, the betrayal from the WHO, infiltrating the sovereignty of the state of Israel and Palestine. Whoever funds this, all these things could be very easily leaked anonymously and a war prevented, basically. But also 2030 intercepted in this region, Maui, and so on and so forth. So there are tremendous implications, and it is tremendous implication because it is so serious. It's a very big question of how does the royal family deal with that, because if this man is extradited to the United States on Algol eclipse, this literally means that they chose a certain path with Algol that is a path of decapitation. And this is not a good path for Pluto and Aquarius, okay? And this is actually surprises me because this is very important to understand that this is the kingdom that survived the French Revolution and the American Revolution. This is the kingdom that Voltaire escaped when he needed freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom from religion. Okay? So this is a place where it was more liberal than other kingdoms, and thus survived the age of revolutions and decapitations of the royal family. Okay, so during Pluto and Aquarius, we will have eclipses with Rahu in, as we're approaching that, as the Rahu in Pisces, and then where is Rahu in Aquarius with Pluto? Where is Ketu in Leo? Okay, this has been off with their heads eclipse sets. And this is a royal family that survived the off with their heads eclipse sets because it has granted freedom of speech and more decentralization. That's how they did it. And they can absolutely do it again. But it seems like King Charles III, at least, is probably not going to be the figure that's doing that. I think he should interfere. But it's very fated for him. So I know that he knows his life and his life trajectory. And so it's not something much I can say, definitely not judge. But I do think that this will have harsh implications on the royal family if Assange is extradited to the United States, both on a very political public levels, like, hey, where's the sovereignty of, this is way worse than Brexit. is kind of like, hey, you can't really protect the people that's within your territory. That doesn't look good. But other than that, it's Algol. It's the opposite of Algol appeasing. And this is, a man that could have prevented a lot of rape and victim blaming just by running his platform, not being allowed to do so, and basically being decapitated for saying the truth and execution, but even in a what they call slow-mo execution. And this is the ramification for royal family for such a thing are horrid. Some people will say, yeah, we will need to get rid of the kingdom in general, and so on and so forth. I say this, no, I think it's not because of I'm supporting of the kingship, or no, I'm not, I'm supportive of just living and letting live, but I think that with charity and the decentralization, they could preserve at least the well-being of the family, and even if they will have a little less wealth, they will have a lot more well-being, and why not? And so those processes can happen in a way that that is far benefic, because Algol, when she is revered, when we have respect, when we do not victim blame, we do not rape, we do not enable rape, and we do and we do interfere to save someone from being decapitated, when they speak the truth, then Algol becomes a wealth talisman, and so the royal family can be even more wealthy if it is honoring of things. Yes, it will go through decentralization and so on and so forth, and so and also we must remember, leaders are people and people are leaders. At the age of Aquarius, the people become the leaders. The solar significations will be relevant to we the people, each and every one of us. Why so many people looked at the eclipse in Aries, at the full solar eclipse in Aries, also in 2017. Everybody looked, even with the astrologers, people booked flight, and then for many of us it was fated to see this eclipse, whether by imagery, it's like you couldn't get away from this, or by actual observation. But for many it was fated to see this eclipse. Why? Because leaders are people and people are leaders. Good morning. This is Pluto and Aquarius. You have to think, every person has to think of themselves as a king or a queen and their own kingdom, because this is what we're building with Pluto and Aquarius. We're switching the roles of the axis. This is also where people will have more accountability, because they are going to have more power. They're going to stand in their power, and then yes, they have accountability for tending to these things, lest they lose the mandate of the heaven. It's something we all need to understand. This is why I didn't even feel myself talking more and more about things to do with leaders and with royal families. Not because I'm becoming a leader of a country, it's because people are leaders, leaders are people, and Pluto and Aquarius, we are the leaders. Also, it was very funny. I had a Libra friend. I have Libra 8th house natally, and she did AI pictures. And one of the pictures she did of me with green, and Venus is my better performing planet, and the color is green, was with a crown over the head. So I used this as profile picture because it was a good picture with the color green, and so this is funny, okay? But so it can look very funny to people, but it's actually my Navamsha. I have ascendant Leo with Sun in Libra. It's actually fallen Sun sidereal in the 4th house. And what do I constantly say? People are leaders, leaders are people. So it's very good symbolism. Tropically, the Sun would be in Scorpio in the 4th house, and the ascendant, would be, tropically the Sun would be in Scorpio in the 4th house, and the ascendant would be in Leo. And then I say people are leaders, leaders are people, and sidereally it would be Libra 4th house, Sun and with ascendant Cancer. There's people with the people, but Sun in the fourth house is the people are leaders, leaders are people. Okay, fourth house is the sign of the people, and Sun, solar figures, the leaders. So unless I'm like Queen of Doom or Queen of Death or something like that, which would be more Scorpio appropriate per some. More things to say about this portrait. Yes, I talked about extradition of Assange, not recommended. My fear is that they are going to take this trajectory. It's maybe they will try to delay it a bit, but my fear is that they will try to do that. It's had horrible ramification of the royal family, and also for Assange, I hope that they will not do that. This portrait showed to me that the symbolism is of archaic notion of spirituality that is no longer funny, but this is also having ramification because we are at the time